Hey there, Internet. Jasmine and Brandon here with comic book reviews for you.
Hey there, nerds. Steven here with some comic book reviews. Starting off, Diablo #1 from DC Comics. So, of course, it's titled the Diablo 3 video game from Blizzard Entertainment that's coming out. And start off by saying it's coming from DC, which caught me off guard. This really feels like something that normally would come from Dark Horse. Not in the way it's written, but just the fact that it's a tie into a video game. Not saying it's a bad thing. I'm actually really liking it because DC's handling it really well. This is a really good story that's explaining kind of the history and like starting to explain the planet that the Diablo game is based off of. And I really like how they approached it as being about a person's story, what they're going through, while still doing the background story, while setting up a story for the comic. It set up a lot of different stories in one comic in a way that can continue on. Regrettably, it's 1 out of 5, and that is regrettably because this feels like something that could be a continuing series and be really good. So I'm hoping that it'll be like a 1 out of 5, did so well, we're keeping it coming, because this really feels like a good title. So I'm going to give it 4.5 out of 5 Nerd Skulls. Really check this one out, especially if you're a Diablo fan. Next up is How to Draw Expressions. This was an interesting one because it's not really a comic book as much as it is a comic drawing instruction book through the use of comics. Like there's a page of writing and then there's an actual like comic book, not even just like a, here's how you draw this face, but actually a comic book using the examples they gave. It really went into the detail of how an expression looks, how an expression works, how the different expressions play out, how much influence it has on the story. The only issue I had with it though is it did an amazing job of explaining how important expressions are, how they play into it, how they're the core of a face, but it didn't give as much explanation on actual drawing it. It gave very little on that. I felt if this was like a two-parter, where this was the first part, and then there was another part that really went into these are the drawings of the comic, it would have been perfect. I would have given it 5 out of 5 just because of how well this was done. But since it only gives like 2 pages on the actual details of drawing expressions, I'm grading it lower because if you're already into drawing, if you already are really good at drawing, this would be a great thing to add to it. But if you're looking to get into it, it's not. And it comes off as a feel of as if you're trying to look into getting into it. So I'm only going to give it a 3.5 out of 5 Nerd Skulls. Next up is Comic Book Comics #6. If you're not familiar with comic book comics, because it is a more indie title, it's one where it is a humorous comic, like kind of poking fun at the industry, the comic book industry, different trends in it, things like that. This one really went into kind of the history of how comics started, how it progressed over the time, how it went into actual retail comic book stores, like brick and mortar stores. It was a really good history collection, really like fun little drawings that poked fun at it while still having a history lesson. I mean, if you're interested in the history of how comics rose up and became what it is, I really recommend picking this up. It was fun drawings, fun, really well done. I really enjoyed this, but keep in mind, this isn't your traditional comic book story. It is like more like a history book with comics. So I'm gonna give it 4 out of 5 Nerd Skulls, and I do still highly recommend it though if you're at all interested in the history of comics. Next up, and the final comic book review from me, is Savage Dragon, The Kids Are All Right. This is a collection of several tradebacks of the Savage Dragon story where it was after the main hero dies and it's his kids, and it's pretty much, as the title says, the kids being all right afterwards and how they progress through that and with identity and stuff like that. It was an interesting one because to start off, I've never read Savage Dragon before. I'd actually never even heard of it since I'm newer to comic books, and so I had to kind of look it up to get a little back history on it. And I felt so awkward about it because it feels as if it was a comic book stuck in the 90s. Like the drawing, the writing, everything like that felt like something stuck in the 90s. But considering it's not the 90s anymore, and this isn't like an old collection where it's like, here's some old releases from the 90s, here you go, enjoy. I felt very like, this isn't good. This is like, it's not that it was like a horrible story, but it just wasn't well written for modern times. And so, I mean, if you're a Savage Dragon fan, sorry for insulting with my opinion, but definitely pick it up because it was a good collection. But if you're not a Savage Dragon fan, I'm gonna rate it on as if you weren't, and I'm only gonna give it a 2.5 out of 5 Nerd Skulls.
Hey there, nerds. Jasmine here with my comic book reviews. First up is Milk and Cheese. It is a hardcover collection of some of the coolest comic strips I have ever seen. Clearly from the 90s and clearly done very well. A lot of it's just doodles, but it's all just crazy raunchy things that a like slice of cheese and a carton of milk do. And it's hilarious. They're smoking and drinking and puking. It's really, really, really funny and easily entertainable. It was phenomenally done. The writing and art was great, obviously, and there's tons of little stuff in there you can read. You can drop it and pick it up whenever you want, and it was just awesome. It's a really cool collection of things that you don't often see. I'm going to give it 5 out of 5 Nerd Skulls. Next up is Avengers Origins, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. I'm not going to lie, lately with the Marvel Universe, I have been quite disinterested, but this was actually a very cool book. I have seen and read little clips of the origin of Scarlet Witch and Pietro. This was really cool. It was a wonderfully written comic, just telling you their story, like they pick up, they're orphaned and they're young, and Magneto finds them and helps them and saves them. So it's really cool to see how the characters develop. The art was touch and go. Some pages were really beautifully done and others were rushed through, you can sort of tell, especially when you have such physical people, muscly and chesty and thighy and all that stuff. It can look really weird sometimes if you don't take the time to proportion everything out properly, which is a big pet peeve of mine. But the book was very well written and it was quite enjoyable. Brian Michael Bendis actually put a little story in the back of books. It was the Avengers Origins 2. It was written out almost like a novel though. So it's cool to see that story in comic book form, because who likes reading real books? That's hard. I want to read. But anyway, this is a great book. You should pick it up. Thor is next up. I'm going to give this 3.5 out of 5 Nerd Skulls. Next up is a Lock and Key one-shot, Guide to the Known Keys. This book is awesome. I'm almost completely caught up on Lock and Key. There's the current series that I'm not reading. So if you're not reading that, or if you haven't read anything, you can pick this book up and pretty much figure out what's going on. So definitely read it. I really loved it. Obviously, the art and the writing were both gorgeous and awesome. And I loved this book, and it put a little tear in my eye. You got a little boy, basically, who is a part of the Locke family, but he has a tumor and he's very weak, and he can't do all the crazy adventurous things the other Locks do. And so his father finds a way with a key for him to do all these things. And it's just really sweet. And in the back, you get a guide of all the keys that are out. So hopefully we will see a one-shot for all the other keys that are out, because that would just be awesome. I want to know the origins for all these keys and how they got made and why they got made. It would be awesome to see, and I love Lock and Key. It's by far one of my favorite comic books. If you're not reading it, you need to check it out. It's very well done. I'm going to give this 5 out of 5 Nerd Skulls.
Hey guys, Bobby here with my comic reviews for the week, and the first one up is going to be The Mighty Thor #8, written by Matt Fraction and art by Pasquale Ferry. Matt Fraction has taken the character of Thor in a whole new direction, one that I absolutely love. On the other hand, Thor is no longer in the book. He died at the end of Fear itself, and now we have a new god of thunder, Daenerys. I kind of felt like Matt Fraction was taking this book in a whole new direction and running with it, but we are going to get more Thor in this book with very important news. Loki has a major shining moment in this book too, so that's good, makes me sympathize for him, as well as Silver Surfer. Major points in this book. He is earthbound, no longer the Herald of Galactus, and it's really cool to see him in his funny ways down on Earth. So I would highly recommend this book. I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 Nerd Skulls. My second comic review for the week is going to be Aquaman #3, Cannibals of the Deep, written by Jeff Johns and art by Ivan Reis. Jeff Johns has clearly proven that he can recreate any DC character in a way that's never been done before. The major difference between this book and all of the other 52 is that it talks a lot about history, specifically Aquaman's history, which is something I really want to know about. I strongly suggest this book. The art is fantastic. It's going in a really cool way. I want to know more about Aquaman and the cannibals of the deep sea. I give this book 5 out of 5 Nerd Skulls. My third and final comic review for the week is going to be Kick-Ass 2 #5, written by Mark Miller and art by John Romita Jr. While this book is very sad, I would be lying if I said it was anything but gripping. Every single time I end a Kick-Ass book, I need more. There's something to be said about Mark Miller's style of shock value, but I don't hate this book. I hate to love it. I strongly recommend it. I think you guys should all be reading it. I'm going to give this one 4 out of 5 Nerd Skulls.
What's up, nerds? Brandon here with some comic reviews for you this week. First off, I got All-Star Western #3 from DC Comics. This is one of my favorite books that has come out of the new 52. You got Jonah Hex and Amadeus Arkham searching 1920s Gotham for the Gotham Butcher. This has been awesome so far. I love Jonah Hex as a character. I'm a huge Batman fan, so obviously any history of Gotham is something I'm totally into. And being that you have Amadeus Arkham in this book, just screams awesome all across the board. I'm giving this 5 out of 5 Nerd Skulls. Make sure you're picking this up, because you're missing out if you're not. Next up, I've got Teen Wolf #3. Yeah, drew the short straw on that one. This is definitely not my demographic. This was not written for me, so I'm going to be a little more harsher on this than I would other books. This is a god-awful book. It's really, really bad. It's written for like high school virgins, and that's all I'm seeing the whole time. It's like, it's violent, but not totally violent, just enough to be intriguing. And then there's awkwardness between the girl and it's pretty terrible. I'm gonna give this 1 out of 5 nerd skulls. My last review is 27 Second Set number 3. It's a little bit of a tongue twister, but I gotta tell you, this book is pretty interesting. I know about the first 2 just from, you know, being around here and having other people reviewed them. And what I didn't know was how awesome the artwork was. It's totally different. It's clean, but it's just oddly shaped. I enjoyed it a lot. The story's really interesting. I'm actually gonna go back and read the first 2 because I wanna know what's going on. I really like this. I can't say enough good things about it. I'm gonna give it 4 out of 5 nerd skulls. All right, that's going to do it for our comic book reviews this week. But until next week, be sure to follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube page, as well as checking out Nerdlocker.com for all your nerdy news. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Jasmine.
And we'll see you next week for even more comic book reviews.